Saka is getting what they failed to give to Ozil. Palmer is getting what they failed to give to Hazard. Salah is definitely getting what they failed to give to Gerrard. The money being thrown around in the Premier League right now is more than we've ever seen before. It seems like these teams are genuinely identifying problems and solving them with cash straight up front, straight off the bat. Of course, with more money, you're going to be able to do that. Chelsea especially, completely different to where they were 10 years ago. Even though they spent a lot of money 10 years ago, putting out fires they didn't even know they had. Of course, Chelsea are a bit of an exaggerated example because they are quite literally throwing money around. And at times people question why they're doing it. But when Hazard was needing that extra few components to challenge in Europe, because they cracked the league a few times with Hazard, but it was always the Champions League that they struggled in. It felt like they needed a few more world-class players or a few more potential players coming through the door. And it just never happened for Hazard. Whereas Palmer has the world at his feet now. They could win anything and you wouldn't even doubt it with the names coming through the door. Maybe in a little bit less of an example, Arsenal seem to be putting out fires they actually need, finally. They've needed a striker for so long. Obviously, Aubameyang came through the door. Good deal. Good at what he did, like put goals away, but they were always a little bit short, especially in that Ozil season when they had the components with Sanchez, Ozil, Cazorla. They needed that striker. Giroud was bought as that man, of course done really well in Ligue 1, but just couldn't really do it in the Premier League to that extent that they needed. Whereas now, look at that team. That is a classy team. And I mean, we all know the story with Gerrard. In 2007, when they had just lost to AC Milan in the Champions League final, you'd thought, they're going to strengthen. They're going to make some massive signings. Let's have a look at who they wanted to sign. Strengthening with Eto'o and Tevez up front. Attainable because Tevez wanted to leave Manchester notoriously. Obviously ended up joining Man City. Eto'o, I mean, for his sake, probably a good idea that he stayed. And Pedersen and Alves. Dani Alves at right back. That was the dream. Imagine that team in 2007-8. This was the team that they ended up going forward with. Of course, Fernando Torres was a phenomenon, and we wouldn't have got that crazy connection between these two. But that is half of the team that ended up going forward the next season. Albeit, they did end up finishing second the year after, so that team was phenomenal. But imagine they made those extra signings for Gerrard to actually push for that title. Of course, the rebuild came after that, and Liverpool are in a completely different scenario. All three of these examples are completely different scenarios, so take this with a pinch of salt. But it does feel like the money is now there for these players to really have a go. And I can't help but think like Hazard, Ozil, Gerrard, maybe they just wonder like, why couldn't we have had a bit of that cash thrown at us to give it a good go?